Hi, everyone. I'm Carl Bierock. Welcome to season 3 of the Jaguar Football Podcast. And with us is the head coach of Seckman Football, Dr. Nicholas Baer. Coach Baer, good to see you. Here we are, season 3. I was a little worried we maybe get canceled, but glad to see we're
They
back.
uh, they signed us back on. Our contracts got renewed,
Phew.
um,
It's a good feeling.
and
It's a good feeling. And I know even it
yeah,
is the off season, you always talk about the wheels of Seckman football keep turning. And so one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today would be the off season. I know you've made some changes and you talked about it on this podcast last December. Wanted to get your thoughts on number one, how those changes are going, and those maybe not familiar or maybe newer to the program. What did you set up this off season that's different compared to the last?
yeah. Right now we're in full swing. As far as what we're doing in the weight room and preparing our bodies for next football season. And we made the change to go to 4 days a week. This winter, for our athletes that aren't in a winter sport. And it's been great. Guys are showing up and we're putting in some very high quality work, and we're going to continue to see, the benefits of that as we move through the off season and into the season. And, it's been a little tough in January, February, always a little tough, kind of really getting that consistency. I mean, there's so much sickness going around right now. I mean, every one of my class periods is missing, 7 or 8, people. I got sick 1 week. I was out for 3 days. I've never missed. I'll get the flu once a year, and I'll be sick for a day, then I'll be back at it. I never miss more than one day. Very rarely have I ever missed two. I've never missed 3 days of work in a row. That thing knocked me out. I didn't get out of bed for 3 or 4 days. Have you gotten it yet, Carl?
Knock on wood, I've been pretty lucky, but I've had some family
Right.
members that have been battling it. There's just something going around, and I imagine just being all cooped up inside. I mean, we've been
Right.
under the
It,
freezing mark for about a week.
Yeah, I mean it's brutal. So I've had it, and we've had a number of guys missing school for that. So really finding that our true stride of consistency. Whereas we're working when we're here, it's been tough for some, going through illness, and then obviously we had the snow apocalypse last week. Missed a few days there, but we're doing everything we can to get together as a team and really start building towards next season.
Now, along with the lifting, I imagine once the weather gets a little bit nicer, perhaps you'll be outside a little bit more. Is that true?
Yeah, right now we're using 1 day a week, before we lift to really work on our running mechanics and some of the movements that we're going to need, and start some of our running as it gets closer to spring. So ideally, when we get out there in the spring, these running mechanics we've been working on, we have them down, we're ready to go, and then now it's time to air them out. We get the dasher system out. We start working on our 10-yard flies, our 40-yard dashes. A lot of change of direction, start stops. I mean, that's what football is. You're not running in a straight line very often. So we'll start a lot of our change of direction stuff. Just need this weather to turn. I tell the boys, hey, you're only down here for an hour a day, one class period a day. I'm down here for 7 or 8 hours a day. So I can't be outside all day long, when it's this cold and things like that. So, certainly, we're going to be testing our 1 rep maxes here in a week. And when we get back from that, we'll start kind of the back half, the last 10 weeks of our program. And that's really when we starting to move a little bit. The key thing about sprints is we're not sprinting for conditioning this time of year. I'm not putting them on the line and running a mile. I'm not putting them on the line and running 10 100-yard dashes. Number one, I'd have a mutiny because it's also during the school day. Number two, that's just not how you build speed, and it's a little bit more controlled. It's a little bit, there's more rest. I know, back in the old days, get on the line. Well, no, actually, we need the body to fully recover after our sprint and then get ready for the next one. We'll limit the volume, so the number of reps we're doing. So yeah, that time will come. Right now, the goal is putting heavy weight on our back and over our chest and on our power clean on our benches and and when the flowers come out and the birds start chirping again, we'll start moving it around outside.
Well, I know everyone's looking forward to spring, and if you believe the Groundhog today, 6 more weeks of winter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we heard that driving in this morning. Me and the boys, we heard it live. Puxatony, didn't come out with the great news today, but and looking outside, he may be right. But yeah, I'll tell you what, that's an interesting thing they got going up there when they do that. So we'll see
Yeah,
if he's
well,
right
we'll
or
see.
not.
6 weeks from now, we'll have another podcast and see if the forecast was correct. But no, and also you were talking about in your emails to the Seckman family, the community. Anything you feel like sharing that that we could look forward to coming up in the next season? I know some of the scheduling has been coming out. I
Mhm.
imagine that there's going to be some more formal gatherings of the players and families here. Anything that parents, players need to be aware of outside of the normal communication?
Right now, I've started sharing the summer schedule already, and kind of what teams can or what our parents can expect. We've thrown in that extra kind of dead week to kind of give us a break before we head into the July. So really, two great opportunities if we need to go on vacation. A lot of it though, and then we've talked about it before. We're kind of moving into this kind of new era, new conference. But we already have this solid base of who we are and what we do, and we're not changing everything. We're certainly making tweaks, we're making additions, but a lot of it's going to be what you can expect from us in the past for sure.
Well, we look forward to it. And speaking of the new conference, I imagine down the road here we'll have a little schedule release party and talk about our upcoming opponents for the fall. But we're all excited. I mean, it's like we're
Yeah.
we're looking out the window and you see snow and there's no leaves on the tree, and then before you know it, you're out there working.
Yeah, we're already building. I've been putting in a lot of work the last couple of weeks building our freshman football team, for next year, and communicating freshman connect night, meeting new parents, and kind of getting them information about the team. Meeting new players. I had the opportunity to go to Antonia Middle School in their lunchtime and talk to some incoming eighth graders, and basically our entire eighth grade team is coming back. So that's a testament to Coach Mike and all his assistants from last year and the work they've done in instilling you know the core Seckman values, Seckman community and their players, and them wanting to continue into the high school. Um, and just meeting the kids the first time, they're all going to be great fits for who we are and what we do. And I'm going to have an opportunity. I was supposed to go to Seckman that week too. That was the week that I got knocked out with the flu. Going to make sure I get over to Seckman Middle School, kind of meet those guys, and do a little bit of recruiting and see if we can find a few guys at the lunch table. We always have some success doing that. So, that's kind of where the bulk of my attention has been right now. When it comes to stuff outside the weight room, and then inventory. This is I've been counting a lot of football helmets. Things are starting to come back, and when you got over 200, helmets at the high school, we got over 200 helmets at the little league. You know, you're trying to make sure everything's of high quality and everybody's prepared, and you have everything you need. And so when I have a spare moment, a lot of it's being spent on equipment right now.
Well, it's exciting. All that hard work will certainly pay off when the weather gets nice. So appreciate
Yeah,
you.
it's definitely not the sexy part that they write about in the newspaper. When I'm back there counting helmets and moving things up and down and then counting shoulder pads and you know, I had a couple guys, football players, poke their head in when I was moving things. Like, well, what are you doing? I'm like, well, this is some of that stuff that you don't see, that they don't tell you about, that you got to take care of, and it's all part of taking care of what we have and having nice things. We are, and I don't know if I've mentioned this already, we are getting new blue and white uniforms next year. So, working on designing those and working with the vendors and getting prices and making sure we get some very high quality jerseys that will last us for a while. That's something we do really well at. Our blue jerseys that we're kind of retiring down to the freshmen this year, we've worn them. I'm going to say this was our ninth season.
Wow.
Having those blue jerseys, and they were still nice and they were still great quality, and we had taken care of them, and that really comes from our parents and our kids too, taking care of the stuff and giving it back. And we have our white and our gold that we'll get to move down to the JV. We're still going to wear some of the gold, um, on a special Friday night occasion. The yellow is my favorite uniform. So,
Yeah.
we got to break those out every once in a while. But really excited about that too. So it's just kind of a lot of behind the scenes things, and that we'll start to unveil when the season starts.
Well, Coach, selfishly, I hope you debut the new uniforms on this podcast.
Yeah, maybe I'll come out in full dress for you.
There we go. There we go. Well, we're looking forward to that, and just seeing the evolution of the uniform. And Coach, as we start to wrap up the podcast today, wanted to get your thoughts about the NFL and the college playoffs. I know the college season's wrapped up, and hats off to Indiana. I would never would have thought like a true. I think of basketball when I think of Indiana.
Hmm.
Seems like even at the pro level, a lot of the games. I don't want to say were how do I put this? It seems like the focus after the game or even during the game seemed to be more on the referees as opposed to the game itself. And wanted to get your thoughts about that. I know, like, what's a catch, what's not a catch, what's a forward lateral.
Hmm.
It seems like there was a lot of noise outside of the stadiums this season.
Yeah, I've watched a lot more football on TV this winter than I'd like to admit. But I think I'm almost kind of ready for a break and to get outside a little bit on my Saturdays and Sundays. But it's always one of those things. Yeah, and you talk about a lot, some of the controversies as far as referees, and it's like we have 25 angles of every play. We have instant replay, and it's still things that guys can't agree on. Like you said, what is a catch, and you're not necessarily referring to how many feet in bounds, because everybody knows, hey, NFL you need two, high school you need one. Now it's okay. Well, how long did you possess it? Was it 1, 2, 3? Did you make a football move? I know I forget what game it was. It came down to it. He pulled the ball out of his hands. It was the Bills game, wasn't it?
Bills, yeah.
Did the receiver have the football and roll through the ground, or did the DB have it? And you have all these angles. And if you slow it down, enough, it's a catch. If to some, certainly if you're a Bills fan, if you speed it up, well, it looks like the DB really had it. And I'm sure the refs are living pretty good lives, living pretty handsomely. I don't really envy, being in that moment and having to make that call. And it really, we talk about all the time, those tight margins, just minus like the one Seattle game, I forget, they blew out San Francisco. Minus that, every game has basically come down to the last possession. I mean, if you watch the Chicago Bears game or anything this year, these teams are down, but it doesn't matter. They're battling back the entire game, and everything's coming down to basically that last drive or one drive. I know you're a big Broncos fan, and it comes down to one call. Should we have kicked the field goal, right? Or you have the backup quarterback in, and you try to throw a pass in a blizzard, and he throws it backwards, and now it's a scoop and score. And when your defense was playing really well, and now you've given them a short field, it's amazing to watch how all these things come down to one call. It's certainly been entertaining.
Yeah, that's the one takeaway I have. Even at the college level, like the games have been very competitive as far as like the score goes back and forth. And I was wondering, Coach, you mentioned that you went to, I believe, as a coaches like meeting this past off season, like you get together with the various coaches from around the state.
Yeah,
Are there
yeah, we
any?
always have the head football coaches convention and things like that.
Yeah, are they talking about? Is there anything like a hot topic as far as like maybe changes in the rules, or have you heard anything that might be impactful, or does it take a long time for those to get?
Well, there's certainly a process that takes a lot of time. One of the topics is always going to be public versus private. Should private school leagues have their own playoffs? Compared to public school? Duh. Yes. Um, Play by different rules. You can play in your own league. But that's always one. That one simply because there's so much money behind the private schools, has a hard time getting off the ground all the time. But there's always how we see districts, how the points work. That was kind of one of the topics this year. Um, you know, it, it's just one of those things that a lot of things. Anytime you need change, and this too. When you're talking about over 300, member schools and everybody having to adopt the same thing, it just takes so long for things to get off the ground and things to get moving. And it really needs somebody behind it pushing it forward.
Yeah, I don't recall, you know, and again, my knowledge is just minuscule compared to yours, but I don't recall like any major changes. But I know when you think about like basketball, there were a lot of issues around the various states, like putting in a shot clock and things
Yeah,
like
and
that.
we just got our new shot clocks last week. They put them up in the gym. They're beautiful, and I guess they're going to the shot clock next season.
Uh,
So that'll be really interesting to see how that translates to the high school game. And I'm certainly no high school basketball expert, but I imagine that the coaches were pining for it, they wanted it, and now they got it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it should be interesting to watch. And again, we just with the timing, the Super Bowl is just a week away. Wanted to just kind of get your thoughts about the NFL and the college
Mm-hmm.
level. And by the way, who do you have in the Super Bowl, Coach?
It's tough. I kind of like watching football because I really don't have any rooting interest in any team, whether it be college or NFL. I'm always just kind of watching the games and just kind of watching them unfold. And if something happens for one team, great. If it doesn't, great. And the game ends and I turn it off and I don't think about it again. And I love going into a Super Bowl like that too. And I know, especially around here, a lot of Patriot haters, Tom Brady haters, and taking us out in the Super Bowl one year, and back when we had a team, and I'm kind of on the Patriot side. I kind of like the young quarterback, Drake May, and just kind of who he is as a human, and it's fun to watch. I like to cheer on greatness, so it's fun to watch a franchise like New England get back. After going being 3-15 last year and kind of really turning 3-14 last year, turning it all around, and having to rely on the run game, with a play action and playing good defense, and you know kind of something I see our team having to do if we want to be successful next year. So I guess if you were going to make me pick, Carl,
Yeah,
I'm going Patriots.
I I will take the other side. I think Seattle's defense is just really good. And plus, given what happened a week ago or so, I'm a little still still a little
Yeah,
miffed.
yeah. Well, anytime you go into a game and you're working with your second string quarterback, like the Broncos were, that it's tough to do. And then all of a sudden you got to do it in the middle of a blizzard. Uh,
Yeah.
when teams all you're always trying to work on, you're always trying to prepare, you know, for a guy to go down at any time. And Bo Nix goes down on like the second to last plays a game of his life. Fantastic win in the wild card round, divisional round, whatever. And then in the news conference after that, he's done for the year. And I know Coach Payton tried to all week say, well, hey, we're going to be fine, we're going to be this, we're going to be that, we're going to not, we're not going to miss a beat. But anytime a starter goes down, as much as you prepare, there's always going to be that little edge that's missing. And we've unfortunately had to go through some of those injuries. Not so much this year off the top of my brain, but in years past, had some starters go down, and you're always preparing. 3 years ago, Anthony Westervelt goes down in the Pattonville game, and probably one of the better wide receivers. You can't really teach 6'2" and jumping out of the gym, and now that piece is gone, and you have guys step up, but not in that same exact way. And that's kind of what happened to them, the Broncos in that game too. And then, yeah, by the way, here's some blizzard conditions. I do. My only question about that game, Carl, and when it comes back to the field goal too, it's like, okay, was anybody telling them it was going to storm in the second half? Like
Uh,
that would be my only thing. Like, okay, the option to go up 10 points, two scores, and I don't trust me. I don't sit and play the Monday morning quarterback because I do that to myself on Saturday mornings, and I'm sure plenty of people do that to me as well, which is fine, all part of the gig. But you're like, okay, if you know a snow's coming, your defense is playing well, going up two scores, do you take it then? And you know, I'm sure as a Bronco fan, you're kind of wondering the same thing.
I was thinking the exact same thing, and knowing how much staff is on an NFL team,
Hmm.
and that's why I did in a previous life. So I'm like wondering, maybe there's an opening for me I could be
Right.
their staff meteorologist. But
Well, I will say, watching, just all these games in general, the amount of analytics and coaches that are going for it on fourth down, right? Or basically anytime they're fourth down inside the 3 yard line, they're not kicking the field goal. They're going for it. They're going for the points. And, I know we found ourselves in some situations like that. And it's like, okay, well, why didn't we kick? Well, you get that close. You think you want the points. You want the touchdown. And I'm watching most of these NFL coaches go for the touchdown, go for the six, right? And we know now it's 4th and 1 in the NFL. Everybody's tush pushing,
yeah,
right? I mean, there's hardly anybody punting on 4th and 1 in the NFL anymore if they're on the plus side of the field or even on the plus side of the 40. So that's kind of the mantra we've had around here too. So I'm really hoping to kind of get back to what we do and really develop that punch and have some confidence when it's 4th and 1, 4th and 2, and doing what we do and getting that first down. And anytime if you're on offense and on a series you've got 4 downs instead of 3, it affects your play calling and what you're able to do, and can extend some drives.
yeah, Coach. I was watching the game, and we'll kind of transition. I know this is the Jaguar Football Podcast, but I think it was the Broncos and Bills game. I swear, I can't guarantee it. They lined up with the Rhino package. I swear.
Oh,
They
I
were
don't know.
talking about
I'd
there's
have to go back and look at the film.
Yeah, they had 2
Um,
defensive players, in the backfield there as leads. And
well, maybe it's gaining some popularity. I think I mentioned it a couple months ago when I watched Cole Rubel and Zach Hudson and Anthony Westervelt down at SEMO. I went to that game, and they lined up in Rhino on the goal line and direct snapped to Cole like the good old days. And I think he scored 2 touchdowns like that, at the Division I level this year. They didn't call it Rhino though. I don't want to give away any secrets, but I think they called it like Hulk Rubel or something like that. I think they call it Hulk. So. It's always fun to see, and hey, maybe the single wing getting a little bit more popularity. We'll see.
yeah, yeah, I meant
It did win a Class
send,
6 state championship this year for Lee Summit. So.
yeah, yeah, I thought it was cool. I thought it was cool to see that. Just want to remind everybody we have our social media channels. You can always pick up this podcast not only on Facebook but also on YouTube. And so we invite our fans to like and subscribe so you're always in the loop on the latest information, not only these podcasts, but just what's going on in Seckman football. And so, Coach, Groundhog Day, off-season weights, hoping for an early spring. Get out there, and you're doing a lot of behind-the-scenes work. Wanted to give you the floor to take us out today.
Yeah, ready or not, it's coming. It's all coming, right around the corner. We've got registration open right now for our spring flag football season. We have we're doing, once again this year, we're having both a co-ed and all girls league. Last year I think we ended up with over 400 youth athletes in our flag football league, which is awesome. Right now registrations are at, I think we're a little bit over 250, 260 in both leagues. And we still got three weeks to go. And, we got our procrastinators out there. We love you. Make sure we get signed up and your player doesn't miss out on a great opportunity. One of my favorite things about flag football is it's 4 weeks long. The commitment that some of these sports take, and this is one where you practice a couple times and kids just get to go out there, play and have fun. And it's what it's all about. So, make sure you get your son signed up for that. And then, hey, once the spring flag football is done, we got a month left of school and boom, we're in the off season. So, I'm kind of enjoying my, non-football thought weeks I have left here, but I also know it's coming around the corner and very excited about it.
Awesome. Well, can't wait. And we will have a link to register for flag football in the description of this podcast, and also check our Facebook page. We'll keep you posted. So, Coach, thank you so much for your time today. Always great talking with you, and we will catch you again on the next one.
Thanks, Carl.
Thank you.